I don't know, there are very few people, you look at the most successful people in the world, I know very few of them that haven't had a major failure. You know, if you read through they're not the financially most successful people. If you read through the Forbes Billionaire list and you read their stories, you know, they've had failed businesses and they've lost everything and they've hung on the, you know, they've almost died holding on to the ledge. You know, what's his name? The guy on CBS and Sumner Redstone. So there are lots of examples of people who had huge adversity. And I think it's how you deal with adversity that determines your ultimate success, as opposed to how you deal with success that determines your ultimate success. The investing business you can learn by reading. You know, read everything Warren Buffett's ever written, watch every YouTube video he's ever appeared in. That's a great way to learn about investing. But investing is more than just, the way to really understand investing is to understand a business. And one of the most important skills you need as an investor is distinguishing between a great business, a good business, a fair business, and a bad business. And one way to get a sense of the quality of a business is go to work for one. So the recommendation I give to people graduating from business schools these days is this is the greatest time in history to work for a startup. There are lots of incredibly interesting businesses being formed. And if you can be one of the early employees, you're going to learn a lot about how a business works, how to make payroll, how to market your product, how to design something. And those skills I think are invaluable. First of all, you might even find it really interesting. You might have joined the next Facebook, so that's one thing. Even if the business fails, you'll learn a ton from that. I think that's the best experience you can get, ultimately, to be a good fundamental investor. How do you be a successful investor? Now, I'm assuming that you're not going to go into the business of investing. I'm assuming that you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, you're going to pursue your passion, but you're going to have some money that you're going to save over time. And I'm going to give you my advice on the topic. It's not necessarily definitive advice, but it's the advice I would give my sister, my grandmother, on what she should do if she were in the same position. I'd avoid investing in startup businesses where the prospects are not very well known. Because again, you don't need to make 100% a year to have a fortune. You just need to invest at an attractive return, 10, 15% over a long period of time. Your money grows very significantly. So how do you avoid the riskiest investments? My advice would be to invest in public securities, invest in listed companies, companies that trade on the stock market. Why? Because those businesses tend to be more established. They have to meet certain hurdles before they go public. The stocks are liquid, so you can change your mind if you want to sell. If you invest in a private lemonade stand, it's hard to find someone to take you out of that investment unless that business becomes fabulously profitable. So that's piece of advice number one. Invest in public companies. Number two, you want to invest in businesses that you can understand. What I mean by that is there are lots of businesses that you deal with in the course of your day and your personal life, whether it's a retail store that you know because you like shopping there, or it's a product, your iPad, or that you know you think is a great product. But you have to understand how the company makes money. The business is just too complicated. You don't understand how they make money. Even if they've had a great track record, I would avoid it. And a lot of people thought Enron was an incredible business because it appeared to have a good track record, but very few people understood how they made money. It was good to avoid it. Another very important criteria is you want to invest at a reasonable price. It could be a fabulous business that's done very well over a long period of time, but if you pay too much for it, you're not going to earn a very good return. The last bit is that you want to invest in a business that you could theoretically own forever. If the stock market were to close for 10 years, you wouldn't be unhappy. What do I mean by that? You know, again, if you're going to compound your money at a 10 or 15% return over a 43-year period of time, you really want a business that you can own forever. You don't want to constantly have to be shifting from one business to the next. And what are businesses that you can own forever? Well, there are very few that sort of meet that standard. Maybe a good example is Coca-Cola, right? What's good about Coca-Cola is it's a relatively easy business to understand. You understand how Coke makes money, right? They sell a formula or syrup to bottlers and to retail establishments, and they make a profit every time they serve a Coca-Cola. People are going to drink a lot of Coca-Cola for a very long period of time. The world's population is growing. They sell in almost every country in the world. And each year people drink a little bit more Coca-Cola. So it's a pretty easy business to understand. And it's also a business that I think is unlikely to be competed away as a result of technology or some other new product, right? It's been around long enough. People have grown used to the taste. Parents give it to their children, and you can expect that it'll be around a long period of time. And my approach in business, in my personal life, in a management role, is extreme candor. And I think that if you live that way, you'll run the risk of offending various people over time. but you'll have much better relationships because, if you tell people the truth, first of all, it's not typical. A lot of people, in the interest of politeness or fear of confrontation, or it's just uncomfortable, don't speak the truth. And that goes for people on boards. There are lots of examples of super talented people sitting around the room as an institution is failing. Think of all the banks during the crisis where people were not willing to confront the CEO. So I'm willing to confront the CEO, but I'm completely candid with him about his successes and his failures. Investing is about the best investments are the ones where we are confident we're right and everyone else is wrong. Okay, and you have to, in order to be, I've been accused recently of being arrogant, among other things.
No, I'm going to actually ask you that. It was pompous, but that's okay.
Pompous? I don't think I'm pompous, but I've certainly been accused of being arrogant. And there's a difference between arrogance and confidence.
Yeah.
If you're arrogant in investing, you're going to get killed, right? If you're not confident, you'll never make an investment, right? So you have to do a sufficient amount of work to be confident enough to have the conviction to do something that's contrarian, right? We bought the stock of a soon-to-be bankrupt a shopping mall company during the financial crisis at pennies per share. You have to be willing to look silly when you do something like that. General Growth stock's up 90-fold since our original investment. We had confidence. Maybe people thought it was arrogant to believe that we could be successful in turning it around.
If you weren't an investor, what would you be? That's a good question. I mean, I would do what I do now, even if I weren't compensated for doing it. Because I think it's a way for me to make the biggest contribution that I could make. I mean, I think about government, if I could effectuate change the same way I can effectuate change in the private sector. But I think I can have more influence as a private participant than a public participant.
And then there's this guy that I met, money manager named Bob Chapman, who I met on a panel 7 years ago. We were on a panel together, shook hands. Never spoken to him since. I've never had an email correspondence. I've never seen him since. But in the last 90 days, he's been running the talk show circuit on how I'm, either wrong or stupid or arrogant, giving quotes to Vanity Fair. It's unfortunate. I don't mind criticism, but I don't like reading things that are, it's hard to read. For someone who doesn't know me well, to be commenting on what I'm like as a person, I find that difficult. But whatever. You have to have a thick skin to be in this business. If you end up in a very public situation, you should expect to have fans and critics. And I just try to focus on what my job is, and we focus on making money for our investors. And I live my life. I went to business school to learn how to be a good investor. And I learned the first rule of investing, which is you do your due diligence before you wire in your money. And when I got to HBS, I actually opened the course catalog for the first time, and there wasn't a class on investing. Now, there were classes on accounting, there were classes on finance. So I decided I had to develop my own little self-study program. And I wanted to, so I opened a Fidelity brokerage account. And I said I had some money I'd made in the real estate brokerage business. This was my tuition in the investment business. And it was about a year of tuition. And if I lost it, it was as if I had gone to business school for 2 years, but paid for 3. So I figured it's like the inverse of the Oxford 1+1 program. But, the first stock I bought went up. And I said, okay, I found what I want to do. A little more involved than that. But actually, my father, who's here, he came with us. That's Dad over there in the corner. You can ask him whatever questions you want afterwards. He told me it was a really dumb idea to start an investment fund right out of business school. And he recommended that I go work for Michael Steinhardt or George Soros or one of the other famous investors at the time. But I figured that I knew enough. This is the perils of youth. But the answer is I was an entrepreneur, and I felt that I wanted to approach investing my own way as opposed to learn from someone else. And it's one of the few things you can really learn on your own. You can learn investing by reading books, by reading annual reports, by you can have a portfolio and invest $100, and you can learn.
Abaco in the Bahamas, and it's like, 20% unlevered return on capital, and he's done an unbelievable job managing it. And we hired a guy named Marius Adamski, who I met on the tennis court. Super talented guy, went to Wake Forest, top tennis player. And I offered him a job, and he's worked for us for the last couple of years. And he did a lot of the research on Herbalife, and he did a phenomenal job. So I just, he's going to go to business school because he needs more training to come back into the business. But I